Welcome to a brand new episode of Almost in Agreement, everybody. You got Tommy Smith here. He's District 1 in the City Council, and he is also, I guess, probably about waist deep at this point in running for re-election, and we'll talk a little bit about that, among other things going on locally. I have to take the opportunity to thank Fanatic Brewing. That's fanaticbrewing.com/agreement. If you want to go check them out on our behalf, they are sponsoring the show. They want me to tell you not about, how you can get their beers at almost everywhere in Knoxville right now, like Kroger and Food City, but they want me to tell you about their fan base, which is their tap room. It's located at 2727 North Central. We are on Friday afternoon right now, so if you hustle down there at about 5 o'clock, they'll open up tonight. They've got $5 black bean burgers and black Angus burgers, and they have a $3 special on one of the draft beers, the 37919. So go check out the tap room there. They'll be open tonight and tomorrow night. Then they also open regularly on Thursdays for open mic night if you're into local open mic comedy. So special thanks to Fanatic Brewing. That's fanaticbrewing.com/agreement. We're Almost in Agreement, almostinagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our website is up at almostinagreement.com. Check us out there for all available episodes. We're also available on every major podcast provider. So Tommy Smith, everybody, here we go. Man, I'm getting good. I nailed that one right on time.
And that music is really good. I couldn't help but tap along.
I can't deny that I was really just playing with samplers and GarageBand. So shout out to the Apple people out there that create all the GarageBand stuff. So
you'd be proud of that production. So that was a one-time one-hit wonder, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't do it again if I tried. But I was in a rock band in college, so I have some music in me, I guess. But
all right, you got some of those skills.
Yeah, it's actually.
I must admit, I was in a little afternoon slump, but I am jazzed.
Right, got it going with that. That's what I do. That's what I'm here to do, is get you through your workday.
Good.
So
I was playing the invisible keyboard right behind you.
Well, if you would have let me put it on YouTube, everybody would have got to watch you do it, and that's probably why you saw it.
Nobody wants to see
right,
that.
that's probably why you said no. Well, I always joke about, for those going to Fanatic, don't worry, I will not be there for open mic comedy night. So
a lot of people like air guitar. I'm an air keyboard kind of person.
That's interesting. I'm a drummer by practice, I suppose, and so I air drum quite often, walking around and stuff like that. So I don't know where to start. We'll go into campaign cycle stuff a little bit later. I don't want to start with the future. We got too much going. We got too much going on that's hot and excitable right now. I mean, first of all, I'm trying to figure out, as a person who is newly trying to pay better attention to the politics and governance going on, if this campaign cycle is starting early or not. I mean, it's not now, but we were back in February when the first little kind of hints of.
Yeah, I had my campaign kickoff in February, and as I understand, I've heard two takes on this. It is early, but I've also got some advice that it's never too early. So I'm not sure. I think typically, it would start kicking off about now, which it is, I guess.
Right. And what's extra weird is county stuff for next year is already starting. And so it's I don't know if this is an intentional move to try to confuse people that aren't paying that close attention. Because if I weren't doing this, it would. Mayor Jacobs announced his re-election campaign. Sheriff Spangler has announced his, as well as Jimmy JJ. And so there's parts and pieces starting to roll in on the 22 election cycle. And part of me feels like it might be intentional to try to kind of catch people try to fill the air, for lack of a better word, and distract. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but that's kind of the more I think. Yeah.
For me, it was more why wait. Right. Might as well go ahead and get started, but I'm sure there's different thoughts around anything.
Right. And I guess I think there's certain issues that are going on right now that it's if you're wanting to get into the conversation, you need to get in while the conversation's being had. I think that's some of especially the sheriff's primary is already starting to happen. I think there's a lot going on with everything that's going on with policing right now and stuff like that. That getting in and being on what you consider the right side of this topic when it's happening is probably more important for their races. But we're not talking about them. We're talking
for ours. I guess the official date is May 20th when you have to turn in your signed petitions.
Right, so. And that's when that's when you get 30 days to change your mind. Is that right?
Yeah. 30-day buyer's remorse, right. I think maybe.
Yeah, because Chris Davis was telling me about some of the processes and that, and it really confused me. It's so you get all the petitions, you get all the signatures, and you turn it in, and then you have 30 days to back out. Well, why would you bother turning it in and then backing out? But then, I don't know. I take exception on. I don't follow the logic behind a lot of the different stuff, and so some certain things like that when I quit trying. But okay, so I guess the biggest, most current craziness is the mayor's decision to pull. I want to be careful with this because I think it's been covered poorly, to my understanding, as far as the agreement with the police department, the city cops, and the school board, or in the schools moving forward. Now, help me out. Let me run it down and see if I'm understanding it correctly. Is that on June 12th, the current agreement will be void, and then the 15. I think that's what. There's a whole total of 15 KPD officers that are in schools. So between then and now, it's to have a conversation about re-upping and changing the agreement between the city police department and the schools. No cops are just leaving school. Everybody's still where they were last week.
Yes.
Police officer wise, it is just
so far so good. You got it.
Okay, because to me, again, some of the narratives that are going around on it is that American Cannon pulled the cops out of the school, which is not accurate.
No.
It's a part of it to me. Part of it kind of feels like there's a question to me on whether it's a budgetary issue, whether that frees up a little bit of budget because there is not immediate but long-term concern with the city budget, as I understand it. It also kind of sells well to the politics of some of the further left locally that want less police in their lives. And I don't know where you sit on all that, but I mean, it's campaign season for you, so this is something you're going to be asked anyway. Like, where do you sit on this conversation with the police and schools as far as that relationship goes?
So, a few things. First of all, good recap. You got it right. I do think that there's room for misinformation and confusion on this. So I'm glad you put all those together. I find we get in trouble when we try to determine intent. So I can only tell you what my intent is, and I won't judge what the mayor's is, but based on other than what she said. But what we do know is that the school board is going to have a conversation around what law enforcement looks like in the schools going forward. And I'm of the impression that if they want KPD there, KPD will be there. So those school resource officers have been there for a long time, even dating back to 2012. And I remember the reason for that because my first son was born the day after Sandy Hook. And so if you think back to the start of their involvement in a sincere way in the school, it was related to mass shootings. And so that is the worst case scenario of all worst case scenarios. And
okay, so that does help clarify some history to me because I keep trying to remember back to when I was in school, and we had a sheriff's officer that was in the schools.
Yeah.
So they didn't
maybe a DARE officer.
I thought it was an actual sheriff's deputy in history because as far as a separate legal body that is these SSOs, what if I'm hearing you correctly, that came into place in 2012.
Yeah. Okay. So and so now you fast forward, and there are three types of law enforcement in schools now, depending on the school. There are almost or close to, or depending on the month, a little over 100 officers that are employed by the school system, trained and employed by the school system. And to supplement those in different schools, there are county deputies and city officers.
Right. Okay.
So, those have grown over time, it's specifically those hired by the school system. And like I said, there's about 100 of those. I think there are about 30 something sheriff's deputies that are in the schools and about 14 or 15 KPD officers.
Right, because that's what I'd heard specifically, that even if American Cannon had pulled everybody out immediately, it was only 15 officers.
So I think the officers are leaving school is not going to happen this school year. And I would imagine that law enforcement will be in schools in the fall. And so here's what I know, and here's what I think on this. One is, I've got nothing but utmost respect for any of those folks, law enforcement, who are in schools trying to keep kids safe. I know from my kids being in school, there are specific examples where they have saved bad situations from going to terrible. and they have diverted issues. So I can't say thank you and respect enough for those folks. The second thing is this is a school board led decision about what law enforcement and security they want in their schools. And
Right.
so that they've hired their own, they've asked for more to supplement. And I think to the extent they ask for more in the future, KPD will provide that.
Right. Because
the third thing that,
go ahead.
yeah,
please.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because it felt to me like that it was the discussion had come up inside the school board, like a work session of the school board or something that kind of was publicly talked about with school board members. And that I think it was Mr. Watson was talking about putting something in place to talk about changing it for the future. And it felt to me like the mayor's response was like, I think you're right. I will go ahead and take care of our side of that so that we can start the conversation fresh when it's time, is what it felt like to me, at least.
That's probably the right connection. I don't think we necessarily need to do that in order to have a broad community discussion, but I think it was the mayor's opinion that would open the door for a broad community discussion. I don't think we necessarily needed to do that, but that's okay. I do think that what will be clear in the summer will be the community needs to weigh in to the school board about whether they want law enforcement in the schools, and if so, what shape that takes.
Right.
Every teacher and principal that I've spoken to in South Knoxville particularly have all said they want police officers and security in the school. And so when it comes to that conversation, particularly as a parent, I'm one voice among thousands about what they want in school. So the school board will lead, and we will provide security from the city standpoint as needed.
Right, because again, I think that's one of those things that whether it was intentional or not, that the actual employees of Knox County School that look and dress a lot like sheriff's officers are not from the sheriff's office. So
That's
even if they're moving forward, the agreement does not include city or county police officers, there will still be uniformed officers in the schools. It'll just be
Correct.
School system officers, not city or county officers. And there's a distinction in a lot of
Correct.
different reasons in what those people are. But I think that's one of those things that again, it's being very in the political side of the conversation. It is being, to me at least, intentionally vague about that part of it, because I don't think I realized it. And again, like I didn't realize it when I was in school. It wasn't a school resource officer, because I was in the Columbine years of school, and that's when police presence started showing up, and it was actual police officers, where it hasn't been really for the most part that for pushing a decade now. And so I think that's a specific difference, because it blew my mind when I was told that it's like these resource officers are not actually, they have some insurance or they're bonded through the sheriff's office or something like that. Yeah. But they're not actual Knox County deputies, and there's a specificity to that I think is lacking for a lot of people that are loosely paying attention.
Well, far be it for me to tell the school board how to what decision they should come to. What I do know is that whoever's in there from a law enforcement standpoint this is just me, the parent talking, okay? Whoever's in there should be trained as much as possible, and retrained and retrained and retrained. I mean, when you're talking about child safety in schools, there's nothing more sensitive and more important.
Right,
so,
and I think training for police officers in general is one of those things that I think is lacking. I was talking to Kimberly Glenn from the sheriff's office a little while back, and I want to say outside of the initial police academy kind of thing, as far as continual training, unless it's an option, there's 40 required hours a year, so 1 week a year. Deputies spend training outside of the job, and that seems like a little light to me, especially with the fast-moving world and situational changes and how we interact as people are changing. And one time a year, you go in and maybe hit the range and some other stuff. Like I'm sure there's guys that go to the range often, but that's not the point.
There's probably not enough. There's not enough training that can be done for those folks who are in the school, and I think the ones that I've experienced. Do a great job. They look out for the kids. They develop relationships and ways to divert things before they escalate. And I think that's extremely important. The other thing that's come up recently that I think is worth listening for, which is the type of security can be different by school. It is now. and should probably have that flexibility going forward. I think the school board will be looking at that too. So I think that's an interesting dynamic that has always been, but has been um, elevated to a certain way. So you could have different structured security at one high school than another.
Right. Because they're different. I mean, if we've learned nothing this year so far, is that the communities that surround schools are different. So the security for those schools are going to be different in kind. And that's one of the things, that's one of those things that on the school side of conversation, going through school board stuff and that budget and all that kind of thing, is that it's one of those things that's very frustrating to me, is when Nashville is trying to unify and make sure it's a level whatever across the state. And like, apparently the virtual school thing is a reaction to a concern that's going on in Memphis. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
no offense to Memphis, but what do you have to do with Knoxville at all?
Different priorities, different situations, different ways to look at authority and security for sure.
Right. So, okay. So we had that. We had some fun public meetings this last month, for sure. I have some issues. I'm concerned that I watched the school board meeting on last Friday, with all the shouting and hoopla on that. Nobody seems to be getting in trouble. But, I agree that I would say that more people should be removed from some of these meetings for their interruptions than less. The consistency is a problem to me. I don't know. That's not important for your sake of it. I can't rationalize how one group screaming and yelling about a certain topic and another group screaming and yelling about a different topic gets different treatment on the way out the door. I don't like that. But that's an aside.
I think consistency. People should be able to raise their voice. There should be consistent order and rules for government meetings. I would agree.
For sure. Okay, so what else is going on right now? We have budgets. Budgets have been the big one. I was really excited this is a failure on my part for sure. I was really excited for budget season. I was going to dig through them and learn things and understand stuff. The pace at which budgets are presented and then passed is a little too fast for me.
I hear. I can understand that. It is. We started talking about budgeting in January, so the public's kind of involvement it probably feels fast because these are just really complex things. I mean, the budget packet that I have is 150 pages. It's available online, and there's a lot in there, so it's hard to digest. And but there's a lot in this budget that I'd like to talk about.
Sure. Because the thing to me, and this has been the question I asked you last time you were on, and everybody else from city or county for that matter, is like one of the things to me before we go into that, and I certainly do want to go down that rabbit hole with you, is where the areas of responsibilities lie. Obviously, within the city limits is city stuff, but how much is county responsible for? How much of the city budget, or how much of the county budget is involving with programs that are going on in the city? Is there an active, this is a joint program because, even though they're city residents, they're county residents too. So the city pitches in a portion, the county pitches in a portion, or vice versa. Like I have an issue out here. The North Shore Drive here down at the Ebenezer intersection floods every year. This first year it hasn't flooded in like 5 years because we have a Band-Aid on it. And as it's been explained to me, since that section of Knox County was annexed a few years back, that a lot of the easements and stuff are city managed. It's a state road because it's North Shore, but it's within the county. And so there's this big hullabaloo of trying to balance all the different entities to get a project done. And so is there planning for that in a budget when you're looking at, the county needs to pitch in some for this project because it is a county pro as well as a city pro project?
The short answer is yes. It gets, particularly when we're talking about engineering and development and property stuff, that gets really complex because there are different zoning ordinances and requirements, et cetera. Yes. And then there are programmatic things that there is direct conversation about. So, we're still talking about the potential for a baseball, multi-purpose event space we're still we fund the chamber, which is a shared resource for bringing companies here. Which, by the way, there's been a steady stream of that recently, which is positive news. So
I have mixed feelings about the Amazon one, but other than that, most of the ones I've heard coming in here I'm pretty excited about.
yeah, so they're those. I say the chamber because that's a programmatic way in which we talk to the county and say, let's chip in on this together because it's important to both of us. Um, so yes, there is collaboration, and there's actually probably a laundry list that I don't have in front of me, but it's a good question of what are the items in which we split some amount of funding on between the city and county. I'm sure that's an interesting list.
Yeah. Well, because again, I was thinking about it, and if you take out the school part of the budget for the county, they're almost, I mean, give or take a handful of million, which it's weird to say it's not a lot different, but
Yeah.
between the two budgets, if you take out the school portion and the sheriff's portion for that matter for the county, I mean, the total budgets are similarly sized. And the thought had hit me in that, well, the county encompasses the entire population where the city only has but the city also gets taxed more, so they should have more per person spent. It makes sense.
Mhm.
And so just anyway, the thought process
It's
goes.
an interesting dynamic for sure.
Right. Okay, so what do you got? What's on this budget? Do you want to
Well, I would say that I think the three things that are important, the three most urgent things in front of us are related to youth violence, housing, and, in my opinion, the economic vitality of local small businesses that are trying to come back from COVID.
Okay.
So, in terms of youth violence, I don't think it gets any more important than that. We've had a horrible year. There's too many lives have been lost, and we're all responsibility that there are some systemic failures that need to be addressed and some systemic deficiencies that we have to overcome.
Right, and I think for sure the other two that we're going to go into are lend part of it as well. I mean, I think the economics of, I mean, just the economics of poverty make certain options more viable than they should be when, when food or a place to stay is questionable. It changes your ability to make a bad decision, or how bad is this decision, I suppose, maybe a better way to put it.
Yep. Stan Johnson at Seed always says nothing stops a bullet like a job. And money doesn't solve everything, but it sure does help. And it sure does provide a stable footing for healthy families, kids that don't have other resources. I actually think one of the most important things that we have to remember, everybody's looking for new solutions, new magical solutions to make this. And the reality is we are investing. The city committed $1 million to, particularly for youth violence, started with Cities United in a contract with them to help with a plan for what are the most critical elements that cause youth violence. We have made some of those investments already, which are extremely important. But the other thing that's really important is there are organizations that have been in this community for a long time doing the work of youth engagement. And those words sound simple, but if I had a magic wand, I would make it to where, well, I'll do a lot of things, but one of the things that are more having a practical magic wand, I would make it to where every kid could be engaged in something meaningful after school and during the summer. And I'm trying to work on some programs that might reinforce that, but Unique Academy, Seed, East Tennessee Freedom Schools, Girl Talk, all of these organizations, I could go on, have been in the community for a long time, specifically getting into young people's lives at an early age in a meaningful way that will just do good, and they just need more resources. So for anybody that wants to get involved, wants to help East Knoxville, particularly, those organizations are doing the work, been doing the work, going to do the work. We don't always need a new thing. The Change Center is a good example of, they've not been around more than 5 years, but that was built in response to a lot of the gun violence that was happening a few years ago. And it needs continued support to keep kids safe. So youth violence is the most important thing in our city in a crisis level right now, and that's one that there's money in the budget for those types of things.
Okay.
The second is housing. I don't know if you saw, but in collaboration with Justice Knox, we've created a housing trust fund. One of the most important parts of that is permanent supportive housing, which just means not overnight shelter, but long-term housing for particularly those who are mentally ill in some way, shape, or form, and will always need support.
Right.
So a lot of the folks you see experiencing homelessness have some mental illness, and so things like Flanagan Landing, Minvilla Manor, and some other and a new place that we're building over near Caswell Park will provide that shelter and wraparound services built into it. So that trust fund is I think it's $10 million, $5 million over 10 years, every 10 years. Excuse me, let me say that again. $5 million every year for 10 years, with a minimum 1.5 million going towards permanent supportive housing. So Justice Knox has been working on that for years. I can't say enough about their approach and collaboration about how you bring change to local community with city government. So they put in the hard work and they're delivering out of it.
Okay.
The other thing that's in here that's really important is supporting small businesses as they come back from COVID. All of our retail establishments got hit. They're all hiring. But beyond that, I think there are 2 or 3 things we can help do. One is access to opportunity. So transportation is still a big barrier. I'm working on a concept where we would do rapid transportation to Forks of the River, where there are a lot of jobs. There's over 100 jobs available right now in that corridor. There are lots of manufacturers out there. Folks can't get there. City buses don't go that far. So we've got to come up with a creative way to get folks to work.
All right.
The other thing that's in here that's really important is 100 Knoxville is a program I helped launch last year where we give seed money to through the chamber to Black-owned businesses to grow their business and to hire more folks in their neighborhood that look like them. That's an interesting concept, and there's money in the city's budget this year to continue that again. So the other thing that's important, there are a lot of pilots. How familiar are, Seth, sounds like something you might have dug into.
I've got some understanding, but
okay.
So again, all right. So for the test of my knowledge here,
okay, yeah, go ahead.
Pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes, right? So it's instead of paying property tax on a piece of property, that same amount will go to some sort of loan system or something like that to pay off a bond of some shape or form. So I mean, the easy one right now is the multi-use stadium project. That they're talking about putting a pilot in for the $140 million surrounding whatever. So as that gets what confuses me about this specifically. So that is it a loan up front on the city's part? That's where I get confused on it. So like for the developer that's putting the $140 million development down there, instead of they're going to get some cash up front to help build the project, and then instead of paying taxes, they will pay back what they borrowed to do the project. Is that
not so much? This is one of those where it is not out of pocket for anybody. So think of if you have a piece of property that's blighted, there's nothing there, it's in an area that's not worth much for whatever reason, and currently you pay $1,000 a year in property taxes. And you come and say, hey, I'm going to take a chance on building something here, but the economics are not there yet. But they will be if I'm successful and other developers, for example, will follow me. So what I need you to, so I can imagine in 20 years, if I do this right and other things come alongside me, small businesses are built, retail beside me, my property taxes will actually be more like $10,000.
Right.
But let's make it more extreme, $20,000. So you're going from $1,000 to $20,000. But what you're saying is it's going to take time for other things to come alongside me and make the economics around me and make people want to shop here and come by here. I got to wait for the other retailer to open a place beside me. I need you to hold my taxes at the $1,000 mark that I have now for 20 years or 10 years. And to let the economics build up, to let the people, more retailers surround me, more kind of business come beside me so people will come shop here. And so the city says, okay, we'll freeze your taxes at the $1,000 that it's at now. And in 20 years, we'll turn the switch and say, whatever it's valued at then, that bigger number,
Right.
That's when you'll start paying those taxes. It gives people incentive. The city taxpayers are not out any more money. They're basically just foregoing incremental taxes over time,
right,
over those 20 years.
Right.
And it gives you, as a business owner, restaurant owner, the time to build up your customer base and get people coming in there so that you can afford the property taxes in 20 years.
Right. Assuming there's no other infrastructural costs involved in that development, assuming there's no city spending on that development otherwise. Then
right.
non-money.
Sometimes there are indirect or passive dollars used to help with the infrastructure. So if you're going into an area that doesn't have anything, the city may say, you can have a pilot. We're going to help you to be brave and go into here as a small business, but we're going to help you with the sidewalk that goes around it or parking. Because if you want people to come shop at your food, at your restaurant or your bar, people are going to need to park somewhere. And we can handle that through our capital dollars. So there's a long-winded way to say is we do pilots for big projects,
right,
huge apartments.
Right, $140 million around a multi-use baseball stadium project.
Or that.
Right.
And so what we don't typically do is use those for 20,000 square foot store in the middle of on Chapman Highway or in a different area that's blighted for small businesses, for smaller developments. And
right.
What I would like the city to do is to see them take a chance on a micro pilot. So right now we have a big threshold. I don't remember what the dollar amount is, but we need to lower that because those incentives should be available for small businesses who want to take a chance on something just as much as they are
right.
developers who want to build a 200 bedroom.
I agree. Right. I agree with that 100%. And the big developers probably more likely to be able to eat that cost over time. They just don't have, they have the power is not the right word, but they have the negotiating chip of this is going to create X.
Yeah,
that's
let's
why
just be real. They
you.
have more money in the bank to weather that.
Right.
Than a small business person who wants to do it.
Right.
And so my point is pilots aren't bad. We should just make it equitable for brave small businesses who want to try too.
Right. Because I mean, I guess I agree with that. If it's okay for a Boyd, it should be okay for me. Why not? I mean, that sounds equitable, for lack of a better word.
So I'm advocating that we try a few of those.
All right. Well, I'll get on Miss Welch about that because I tried when they were in here on the stadium talk. I tried to get him to set up a program for my podcast. So they
okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, and this is just the legacy of way cities fund is that the little restaurant owner that wants to take a shot but needs the similar help doesn't get that. So I'm trying to change that. So that is a lot. There's a lot of things in the first district that are here, but I'll summarize to say there are 2 or 3 things that are really important. One is there's continued investment in the urban wilderness. The thing that's most special about that, I think, is an economic way, which is most cities develop areas by building big buildings. And we've done that in different areas where it makes sense, like Market Square. But another way, in a very rare way, in the way that we've chosen, particularly for South Knoxville, is to preserve land. And everybody's property values have gone up by preserving land as opposed to building a bunch of stuff on it, which I think is just really special and unique. And it rewards the existing residents more than the big buildings sometimes rewarding folks who aren't here yet. So I think it's extremely special. It's for everybody in the city. We should make it as accessible as possible, and it's a good investment.
I got one for you moving forward is no new parking lots. I want no new parking lots in the downtown, in the greater Knoxville, of the city part of it. I think that model that the Publix Walmart down there next to campus, I think for the real urban development, I think it needs to be like that. I'm so exhausted with driving down Kingston Pike or whatever, and it's, all parking lot with a building in the back, all parking lot with a building in the back. I agree that parking's a thing, and we need parking, and we can encourage the mass transit system and the new electric buses that are coming in and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, there's, especially in giant buildings like that Walmart Publix complex, it actually looks kind of cool, and it's nice in the summer or when it's raining and you're covered and all those kind of things. But it also, you get a lot more use out of the space. And I understand that it's more expensive for the developer, but I think as we grow, it's not going to be an option.
I think you're right. And a lot of, we're in this in-between stage from being a little small city to becoming a city that's getting a lot of new residents. And so the challenge becomes, we're used to being able to drive up to retail place X across town, park right in front of the door and go in, to, we don't necessarily have to fast forward this. It'll be a long transition, but other cities bigger than ours that are more dense than ours encourage people to kind of live in their village and walk to places. And so that's a multi-decade transition, and it'll be for the next 2 decades, it'll be a tension between what you're proposing and the folks who have businesses sometimes also wanting people to be able to park right next to the door too. It's really hard.
But I think one of the things that people, especially county folks like myself, don't consider in it, it's that if we continue to sprawl, it's going to take our backyards anyway. And so if we don't encourage it now, it's going to get to the point where, sure, my value went up or whatever, but I'm going to sell my house. Some guy's going to tear it down and put like four units on my same piece of land. And for those of us that like a little space around our house and can afford it and whatnot, we're going to lose that opportunity to keep both. I mean, it's to try to balance the two. Is going to be hard if we don't, because again, one of the things to me that frustrates me when talking about stuff like this is trying to be proactive about things, and growth here in the city county is coming. And if we are not prepared for it, it's going to be 10 times worse and 100 times more expensive if we're trying to react to it, which is why I think we need to go Metro. Throw that out there. Got to say it every episode. I got to have a Metro. Got to pitch Metro. But
you use the M word. You slid in the M word.
It's just, it's a reality to me, and it's one of those, like, it's the same thing with me and like pot, like federally legal pot is going to happen. There's nobody out there that really thinks it's not going to happen at some point. It's just this weird, like, well, we can't do it yet for whatever reason, because we don't want to. But it's like, we all know it's going to happen, so let's plan accordingly instead of wait till it happens and then react. And I don't like that. And I get it as a government thing. Governments in general are reactive. They have to be. But there's certain things, especially in growth, that I think we could do some positive things now to make it better 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Another example of that, this is same theory, different, a little different, is employment. We have bigger employers in town, even smaller ones, there's a shortage of workers. At the same time, you see a poverty rate in different parts of town that still lags. And so there's a disconnect right now due to just not focusing on talent, training and connection and access to opportunity. There are employers saying we can't find enough talent. There are some people saying we can't get paid enough or can't find a job in general. Those are both true, and there's a huge disconnect. So I think things like, I'm trying to set up apprenticeships with South Doyle High School. I'm trying to set up rapid transportation to employment. I think 100 Knoxville. Those types of things that give access to people, connecting that, bridging that gap between employers saying I can't find anybody and the people that say I want better works and therefore better income will solve a whole bunch of things for generations to come. So we have both things you need. People have trouble connecting to them. Right. And so that's the number one priority for me. And it leads to youth violence.
Like we said, it comes back around. Yeah.
Generational wealth stems from home ownership,
Right.
stems from lack of access to financing. Go back a few a few decades to redlining. I mean, you can
Yeah.
follow the
I was a
dots of
I was
let's
traditionally a more staunch, like, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just a dude today, living just like every other dude today, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I don't remember who it was some other podcast I was listening to where that generational wealth thing, and what the number one source of generational wealth thing. And it's like, well, okay, there's no law against a black family owning a home now, but when the wealth of my
Yeah,
grandparents and my great grandparents came down the generational things and lands in my lap,
yeah,
although my parents and grandparents are still kicking it, they're not going to die. I'm never
yeah.
going to get any of that money. But
This is
that
really important, Seth. I think people get paralyzed in this conversation right here by looking backwards about whether I deserved where I am, or whether I've pulled myself up, or whether they didn't get the chance, or whether um, that is an important conversation. It leads to healing. It leads to same starting point, but to a certain point, we should all just push our chips to the middle and go, let's focus on right now recovering from that,
right.
regardless of the roots of it. We people will always disagree on that, but to a certain extent, we have good jobs. We have people who want to work. Let's put every ounce of our energy in connecting those two dots.
Right, I agree, and on top of the looking back is only going to do so much in understanding and healing. It's also we're in this weird spot where you've got to be, especially you. I don't have to be as careful about it, but I have some need to be a little bit particular about some of the word choices I use and stuff like that, because when we start talking about race, especially we got two white guys here chatting it up about income inequalities and stuff like that, it can get really sticky.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of the largest problems with it too, is that until I stumbled across somebody who explained it to me a little bit better,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't internalize it. I could hear the words and stuff like that, but it wasn't internal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this general wealth thing, that's what we're talking about here. These are the issues of the history of it, and that's how we got here. But it was a happenstance for me in exploring some conversation with somebody somewhere,
Well, I
because
think
it's an
there's
uncomfortable conversation to have.
a moment to rejoice is the fact that we are having this conversation, right? Um, that uh, that it has become forefront to everyone that it wasn't before, and so much so that we're having the conversation. And I think that is in the midst of struggle, in the midst of perceived slow progress, there's a moment of rejoicing of we are we are making progress on this issue right now as we speak, and that will have an impact for generations to come. So I think it's really hard to see change right in front of you in the moment. It's obviously easier to look back 10 years ago and say we've moved, we've progressed,
Right.
and because the hard progress is the real progress. I should say the real progress is the hard progress. We're doing it right now. And I think that the more we appreciate that, the more energy it gives you to do more.
Right, because again, I think people are scared of it, and if it doesn't normalize that we can talk about it and we can look at it in a more rational standpoint instead of it being very emotionally, reactive to how people are talking or whatever, until we can get past that level. Because I was talking to Gwen McKenzie on when she came on the show, and I catch myself rolling, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm coming off as a racist right now. That's not the intent. I'm trying to understand. And I'm stubborn. I'm at the point in my life where I'm stubborn enough that I'm willing to look like the bad guy to get the understanding. And I think that's something that's going on in the social sphere is not going on as well, because I don't know, maybe I'm special in my stubbornness, or maybe it's
Well,
my general stupidity. I don't know.
You deserve you deserve credit for pursuing it the same way Gwen deserves credit for giving you the grace to fumble through it. So I think that's really important. Sometimes rage and anger and frustration with progress, because it's not fast enough, can be so blinding that you don't see it happen right in front of you.
Right.
And and you can't contribute to it because you're so angry. I think anger is legitimate, deserved, but also exhausting. And so folks like Justice Knox coming together and finding ways to disagree well and get things done. Martin Luther King Jr. had a quote related to this. I'm going to get it wrong, but he said something about we must accept the finite disappointment, but never lose hope of the infinite hope, or something like that. So you will always be frustrated with the lack of progress that you feel is unjust. So let's do something about it.
I like that. I'll have to look it up and get it properly done. But I
may have butchered it, something like that.
That's how any good quote is always butchered properly by the attempt. I mean, Mayor Jacobs got in trouble for it too, just this week in his budget. Did you hear that about that one?
Oh, did he?
It was a CS. It was an often attributed C.S. Lewis quote. I can't remember what.
Very good.
I can't remember what the quote was. Apparently, but it was in. Somebody who wrote one of the movies from a C.S. Lewis book used it, and then it gets, so it's a little bit whatever. It's just that's the art of quoting is you got to be really precise or preemptively know that you're wrong when you're doing it. So then either way you're covered.
Yeah. Well, the bravery required for change is equal to the measure of grace of those who benefit from that change. So I think we're having this conversation. We're doing things right now, literally, that will have an impact for it. Gwen's resolution, for that matter, I don't know if y'all discussed about that, but the one that she led for $100 million, $10 million a year, that will go directly towards preventing youth violence of a 16, 14, 13-year-old kid a decade from now.
Yeah.
And
so
for that, we should say that now, because it's hard to see progress right in front of you.
Right. The city, sadly, when I had her on was the 14th of April. So that show got kind of taken over by the situation. So, which I was grateful. I mean, accidentally perfect timing as far as, her district and all the different things going on about that situation. But it did kind of overshadow all the other stuff that was worth talking about, that she's done and that's been going on in the city. Yeah. All right. So,
well, speaking of, soon I need to get down to Austin East for the students are leading a march.
Okay. Then the last thing real quick, and it's my standard for anybody in elected office is, you went over a couple of things in the budget, but anything that's been going on that you don't feel like's gotten a lot of coverage, that maybe people should be hearing more about, that maybe they haven't from our standard local news sources, especially getting buried all under all the other stuff.
I don't want to fail this, because your open-ended question for me to talk about stuff is rare. I guess one of the things that's important that we don't talk a lot about is our blueways, so our rivers and streams.
Mm-hmm.
So activating the Tennessee River, which is probably the most underutilized natural resource in our entire city, has for decades been neglected. And we've joined the Tennessee River Line, which is all of the cities along the Tennessee River are all contributing to more access to the water and better cleanliness of it. So I think next week, on May 21st, actually 2 weeks, that we will have a kickoff celebration with the Tennessee River Line at Suttree Landing Park at 11:30 a.m. And it's open to the public, and it'll be the start of visioning for how we better activate, utilize, and take care of and provide access to the Tennessee River. So,
well, if we're giving out smaller TIFs and pilot programs, I've got an idea to put some commerce on the river for the city. But if you don't care, shoot me that link or whatever, and I'll put it in the show notes here in a second. And when we finish wrapping up the show, so I guess we didn't get into the campaign part other than it's officially started. Do you want to plug your campaign website or anything like that real quick, and then I'll let you get on with your day?
Shamelessly, yes. TommyForKnoxville.com. I'm focused on investing in people as much as we invest in places. As I mentioned earlier, connecting people to work is number one, particularly small businesses that have struggled through COVID. We got to get them back up and running. And the urban wilderness is for everyone. And I think that's probably the most special asset we have for generations to come. And I think equitable access to opportunity is extremely important. So that's what I'm focused on. I view this as public service. The energy I put into it, the exhaustion associated with it, is about helping people. That's my only goal.
So what's your percentage of roads run in your district? I saw
There's
that
601 roads, and I think I'm up to 350.
So you're past the 50% mark. You're getting there.
I've passed it. Yeah, it's a lot of walking, a lot of bike riding, tagging my kids along, and some neighbors walking with me.
I'll tell you one. We shouldn't put it out there, but the quarry down there is a fantastically fun time to go swimming and stuff like that. I don't remember.
We have two quarries, Meads Quarry and Augusta Quarry.
I guess
the budget includes Meads is the one you're thinking of over by Iams.
Yeah, no, the one that's right there.
Augusta Quarry.
Is that
Fort
Augusta?
Dickerson.
Yeah, yeah.
Good news. You'll be happy to know if you use it. Part of the budget, the biggest expense for South Knoxville is another $1 million associated with them activating the water down there to make sure you can put kayaks and walk well and updating trails. So
cool. Yeah, because that was the weird part, is you got to kind of hike in a weird side road, and they were doing construction last 2 summers ago when we were down there or something like that. All right, real quick, it was Tommy for Knoxville.
Yes.
Is it the number or the letter, or the letters for FOR?
Letters. Tommy FOR Knoxville.com.
Yeah, silly advertising. You got to do all the cheat things. Make sure I get it right. All right. That was fun. It was informative. It was stuff that needs talked about. I'm out of time. You got something else you got to do as well. So I'm going to play some outro music, and I appreciate you, sir.
Good man.
Tommy for Knoxville.com.
I was hoping to get back on my air keyboard.
Hold on, your what?
I was going to say, turn it up so I can hear it. I was going to get back on my air keyboard.
Oh, get on it. Keyboard time, people. TommyForKnoxville.com. Look him up. That is coming up this summer. We're getting into the primaries and stuff on that city race. We'll be doing a lot more coverage on that. Special thanks to Fanatic Brewing for sponsoring this episode. FanaticBrewing.com/agreement. Check them out. If you are listening to this right now, which you're not, never mind. But they're doing a tap takeover at the Food City Morel right now. Check out the fan base, their tap room. It's 2727 North Central. They've got $5 Black Angus burgers or Black Bean burgers Fridays and Saturdays, as well as a $3 draft special for those of you guys that are interested in that kind of thing. We're Almost Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our website is up and running. It is almostagreement.com. Check us out there for all the episodes, as well as any major podcast provider. We got more stuff coming up this weekend and going into next week. We appreciate y'all for listening. Have a great day.